And a lot of people don't realize it, but there was a great deal of sorrow about Abraham Lincoln. When you see pictures of Abraham and one like that picture, you don't ever really see the man smile, and you always think to yourself, boy, this man's got the whole world on his shoulders. Well, when he married Todd Lincoln, and they were out in Springfield, Illinois, and he was a lawyer in the legislature, he had 4 boys. And of course, his one boy, Eddie, died at a very young age. So then he's left with Robert, Tad, or Thomas, and William. So now he becomes the President of the United States, and he moves to the east, goes into the White House. And you got to remember one thing, that all this time, now I'm not a very famous person than Mary Lincoln, because Mary Lincoln was trouble with the big T. But the thing about it is even Lincoln wasn't very happy with her, because he could never understand why Todd had to have 2 D's when God only had 1. He couldn't figure that out. He never understood that. But he would come up with those little anecdotes, you know. Hey, you got a last name of Todd. Why can't you deal with 1 D? How come you got 2? What does that mean? You know. So it was very funny. So anyway, during his time in the White House, and then of course in 1862, more tragedy struck him when 2 of the boys got sick with typhoid fever, William and Tad. And of course, in 1862, William died, and Tad went on for a number of months before he finally survived. But now there's another good thing for you. Tad, think about Tad. Tad was a bad boy. Did you know that Tad was so bad that they couldn't get him to go to school? They had tried to have him tutored, and he almost killed his teachers. And anybody that come into the White House to visit the president, he charged them. Well, I mean, he was an enterprising kid, but the thing about it is you just don't do things like that, you know. Hey, oh, nice to see you. You want to see my father? Yes, 50 cents. You know, come on, you know. Oh, you, young lady, you're pretty. Give me a dime. You know, hey. You know, so here, these are the kind of things that went on in the White House with Tad. But Tad was, you know, he was born. He died in 1871 in Chicago at the age of 18. And he tried to go to school. He couldn't go to school because everybody laughed at him, things like simply because he was Abe Lincoln's son, really didn't carry any weight. They basically just laughed at him because, you know, a lot of people laughed at Abe Lincoln too. But the thing about it is that he was a very smart, intelligent man. But the thing about it is the only one that really, and I want you to remember this now, especially you kids, I'm going to tell you again. Abraham Lincoln's sons, he had 4 of them. Edward, Robert, William, and Tad. I'm going to ask you that later on and see if you can tell me those names. Then in the White House, 2 sons got sick with typhoid fever. One was Tad and one was William. William died. I'll ask you that question later on. See if you can tell me. Now, most of the time, most people can't answer that question after you ask them. You know, I'm going to tell you something funny. You know, you stand up here and I talk about Abraham Lincoln, and I can go all the way back to the founding fathers and talk to you about a lot of things. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, you name it. But you know what's funny? Now I see, young lady, how old are you?
14.
Uh-oh, she hesitated. Mom, don't you know how old she is?
I was letting her answer.
How old are you?
18.
18? Holy smoke. And how old are you? 50. Oh, 11. Not too many months ago, there was a group of young children in here from the West Grant High School. I think it was a middle school. But anyway, they're all sitting where you are. And they were all interested in what I was talking about. For some reason or another in the conversation, I happened to bring up George Washington. Now you see how these young children, oh honey, I'm sorry you're tired. Anyway, these children sit here and they're all looking at you, and the one girl puts her hand up. I said, oh, you have to go to the restroom, it's right over there. Oh, no, I want to ask you a question. I said, yeah. Who's George Washington? I said, what?
Oh, no.
She says, who's George Washington? I said, you don't know who George Washington was? I said, he was a general. He won the Revolutionary War, him and his army. Never heard of him. You gotta be kidding me. All right, now, just think about that for a minute. Now, here you got a whole
Scary.
group of young kids, just like they said. Now, put your hand up and you all tell me. Who doesn't know anything about George Washington? Whew, everybody's hand goes up. I said, this is unbelievable. Now, I'll ask you. Now, you told me how old you were?
15.
15. Did you ever hear George Washington? Of course you did. Did you? Of course you did. How about you? Of course. Now, I'll ask you the question. Did you ever hear of Abraham Lincoln? Of course you did. So who wouldn't hear about George Washington, the father of our country? But it's unbelievable, the amount of people who don't know. It's surprising. And you know there's people in college that don't know.
The same.
Now, let me ask you this, now. So, okay, now I'll ask you, you know about George Washington? You know about Thomas Jefferson?
I heard of it.
Oh, there you go. She heard of him. I heard of him. Did you know what he did? Okay, now let me ask you this. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln was the President of the United States? The 16th President of the United States? You knew that? Oh, well, that's great. How about you? Did you know that? Did you? Go ahead, get me. But you see, the thing about it is that these is why we do these kind of things, so we can educate you. That's basically what my job is to try to teach everybody, even the public, about these sort of things, because it's very important. Because you know why? I got grandchildren of my own that go to school now. And they tell me all the time, they just don't teach these things in school, which I'm very amazed at. They said, they don't even call it history no more, it's social studies. Can you imagine that? Do you know who Daniel Boone is? There you go. She got a funny look in her face, she's afraid I'm gonna ask her. But anyway, just to tell you what the various things that happen is that, you know, when you think about Abraham Lincoln, you know, you have to, and what the man really did now, many years ago, Thomas Jefferson, I already told you, he said when it came to Louisiana Purchase, he wanted to move westward slavery, and he said if he didn't move slavery into the Missouri Territory and into that territory, that there could be a civil war. Well, when it actually happened, 50 years later, it happened to Abraham Lincoln. So just think about that. And then, when you take into the fact that Abraham Lincoln's all of his children, Tad died when he was 18 years old, William died young, Edward died young. The only one that really made anything of himself was their son Robert. Robert was a lawyer and a politician and a businessman. At one time, he became the Secretary of War. And the funny thing about Robert was when he was offered the job of Secretary of War, he said, listen to me, you're not going to offer that job to me just simply because I'm the son of Abraham Lincoln. If you can't give that to me on my own merits, I don't want it. He also became an ambassador to the United Kingdom. And he was the oldest one to live. He died in 1926. And he was a very famous. And the sad part about Robert Lincoln, in the early part of his life, he had to put up with his mother, who went just a little bit wacky. And he had to deal with her. And you do know this, don't you? That Mary Lincoln did not ride on the funeral train with Lincoln. And they had a very difficult time with her when, on February the 14th, when he got shot while watching a play in Ford's Theater called American Cousin, that she got so bad that they had to take her out of the room and would not allow her into the room. And then they sent for his son Tad, thinking that if Tad had come there, that Tad somehow or another, because Lincoln loved the boy so much, that it would revive him. It was kind of like asking for a miracle. You know, in other words, it's kind of like if Tad came in that room and Lincoln would know it, if he was there, that Mary Lincoln thought it would revive him. But you got to remember one thing, his name was Tad Lincoln, not Oral Roberts. So there was no possible way that was gonna happen. So anyway, but Tad was finally taken home and put to bed, and he never got over the fact that his father actually died. But the thing about it is, Mary Lincoln from that time on also was never right in her mind. But sadly enough, what I read about Mary Lincoln, she wasn't right, period. Even from the time she married Lincoln. And Lincoln, a matter of fact, before they even got married in 1842, Lincoln didn't even communicate with her for almost 18 months. Although she pursued him, he wasn't pursuing her. And I think it had something to do with the 2Ds. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what really happened. So the thing about it is that so now you get the picture, and so now you know. So then, because Abraham Lincoln on March the 4th, 1865, after his last inaugural address, was called out onto the balcony of the White House by thousands of people on the White House lawn, wanting him to make a speech. Sadly, and you want to tell you something else, in all of his inaugural addresses, John Wilkes Booth was there and heard him. So that night on March the 11th, 1865, when he gave that little talk to all the people out on the White House lawn, who do you think was out there? John Wilkes Booth. Now, for years, John Wilkes Booth had plotted to kidnap Abraham Lincoln and take him home as prisoner until he turned all the rebel prisoners loose that was held by the North during the war. Well, for some reason or another, every time that he tried to do that, his plans got foiled. So therefore, he just let it go. Now, on the March the 11th, when they were out there listening to Abraham Lincoln's speech on the balcony of the White House, some of his conspirators that were with him, Azarat, Powell, and a few others, were jubilant when they realized the war was over and everything going good. Oh, they were all happy. Now they didn't have to worry about getting involved. Well, that didn't work that way. John Wilkes Booth had a little paper in his pocket that says, hey, listen, you were involved from the beginning. You don't fool around with me. So anyway, when Lincoln says what he was going to do with the blacks now that the war was over, John Wilkes Booth changed and looked at Azarat and Powell and said, I'm going to kill that man. And he did. On February the 14th, while he was watching that play, he stuck his hand through the door, stuck a gun to the back of his head and shot him. He then jumped into the room, ran across, and there was a Major Backbone and his woman there. He slashed him with a knife, jumped over the balcony, off he went. Abraham Lincoln was then left there in the room for a while until they took him across the street to the Peterson boarding house and put him in bed, where he lay there until 7:22 a.m. on April the 15th when he died. Then Abraham Lincoln belonged to the ages. And that's quite a lot of what happened to Lincoln. But oh, there's a lot more. But that's something you all, I hope you will all do. If you look over here, there's all kind of books the Scranton Public Library has here to Sound Lincoln. And believe me and trust me, you should really, really read some of those books, because I'm going to tell you something. Think about Abraham Lincoln. 1 year's education, and look what happened to him. He became the President of the United States and only had 1 year education. And how did he get that way?
Book reading.
Reading books. And yet he was able to become President of the United States. You can do the same thing. But the thing about it is read. Read about history. Read about our founding fathers. Read about Thomas Jefferson and George Washington. It's very important. It's important because you know why? You're the future of the United States. You're the future of America.